All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Quill and Hammer Reforging Fiction. I'm Trevor, this is Zach, and Zach, what are we doing today?
Well, today we've got a bit of a problem because we're going to be discussing episode 9 of the Star Wars Skywalker Saga, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, normally we would try to, one of us criticize the film, the other defend it, but our problem is that there's really not enough to defend.
I
There's just not enough there to make a real case that it was an acceptable film.
I have been struggling with this for a while, Zach. And by a while, I mean I watched the movie again last night and took notes and tried to think it through. I cannot find very many plot points that I'm like, this was a good choice.
Right.
And and first off, like, why do you think that is, Zach? Like what was the main problem with this film? Because we've talked about this before, but like I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, the whole problem is that they divided in a big way the fan base with The Last Jedi in a huge way. People were unreasonably, well, not unreasonably, there were certainly reasons, but they were so upset by the way The Last Jedi went down. And so Disney was scrambling to try and say, well, what can we do to get people to like this film? We'll make all these cameos. We'll bring Lando back. We'll bring the Emperor back. We'll, show Leia training Rey, all these things that they were trying to just almost like fan service, like they were vomiting fan service at into this movie just to try and get everybody back. And I think they did that at the expense of any sort of cohesion in the movie. There was no logic to the plot, and it certainly shows.
I agree. Let's go through some of the basic plot points really quick that I thought, okay, this doesn't make sense at all. And you and I have talked about this again for the last probably 7 years, 6 years. When did it come out?
Right, right, something
Um,
like that.
but like,
Well, and, and
and
and that's not to say that there weren't good things in the film
right.
standalone. So I think, there were things that I thought were okay. There were things that you thought were okay. We don't exactly agree on them, and maybe we can discuss those types of points.
Um, Absolutely. The thing that I guess I struggle with though is the core plot. The core plot is shoot, well, we killed Snoke, who is supposed to be this main villain and really awesome, and then we killed him. So now we don't have a villain. And if we're gonna redeem Kylo Ren, how are we gonna do that? So we need a villain. So let's bring back Palpatine. Like, okay, how did that work? How did they even get his body or his DNA or his cloning stuff or whatever? Like that, it doesn't make sense that that's even possible. Even
Well, the
though, even though the dark side is a path to many abilities that people deem unnatural.
I'm fine with the idea of cloning. Cloning is a standard practice in Star Wars. It's, even in A New Hope, when it wasn't even A New Hope, it was just Star Wars. Um, when Obi-Wan is talking to Luke, he mentions, I fought alongside your father in the Clone Wars. So from the very beginning, George Lucas had this idea of clones. And so I'm not so much upset about the idea of Palpatine having a clone. What I don't think is okay is how the crap did they get his consciousness into that clone? That's
Yep.
what doesn't make sense.
Right, right. That's my point. I don't understand how real Palpatine can be there.
Right.
And with all of his powers.
Exactly.
That's the thing I struggle with. Um,
Well, and
but
go ahead. Finish your thought.
but just that they pull it out of nowhere. Somehow Palpatine returned. And and now the entire plot is how do we get to that world, Exegol? How do we get there? And then it's just this mess of absolute horse crap that gets you there. And they didn't have a plot. It was like, what can we do? Uh, let's. There's a I've got an idea. That's what Luke was doing. He wasn't throwing a hissy fit. He was searching for Exegol. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, what else? What else can we do? A scavenger hunt. Let's a dagger, Zach, an ancient Sith dagger. Like, like it was like they drew out of a hat and they were like, everyone put down your ideas. Palpatine returns. Great. Okay. A dagger leads the way. Great. You know what I mean? Like that's what it
I
felt like.
do. It felt like it was a hodgepodge of ideas that could have been incorporated into the entire trilogy, but were forgotten about or discarded. And then it was like, well, we need to throw a movie together because there's supposed to be three. We said it was going to be a trilogy. Number eight was hot trash, and now we need to finish. So let's just throw something on there. But going back to the clone point, I just want to round this off. There is somewhat of a precedent to this type of idea, and it comes from the the first, let's see, the first Star Wars books that George Lucas authorized, which was Heir to the Empire, the Thrawn trilogy. In the Thrawn trilogy, for those who haven't read it, there is this kind of a side plot. It weaves into the whole thing, but there's this plot where Luke is tracking this Jedi master, or he's trying to find this Jedi master, and it turns out that he is a clone of an earlier Jedi master, and he's unstable because the whole idea is that you can't clone force sensitive people and have it be successful. Something goes wrong. Either there's physical malformations or their psyche is messed up. That's what it happened to be in the Thrawn trilogy. I can't even remember his name, but
Boruus Sabayoth.
that's what it was. That's what it was.
I don't want to brag, but I'm kind of a nerd and have read all of those books multiple times.
So so his psyche was messed up. He was completely unstable.
Right.
And so there is a bit of a precedent for it. So I'm okay with kind of the general idea. I don't think it was a bad thought. I just don't think they thought it through all the way.
No. And listen, if this is where they were going to go from the beginning, I would be more okay with it.
Right.
Because they would have thought it through. Our biggest problem with the movie is there was no plot. It was like Star Wars. J.J. Abrams, write a movie. Okay, great. You set up some plot points. It was basically A New Hope, but whatever. Ryan Johnson, do something. Instead of being like, okay, we've got this scavenger Ray. It's gonna basically be, it's gonna start off the same way as A New Hope, but we're gonna diverge and we're gonna do something that people don't see, and we're gonna tie all of the movies together, and it's gonna be really cool.
Right.
They didn't do any of that. They just had no direction at all, and then And you can see because each subsequent movie was a worse hot mess than the last one.
It was, and I feel like we've beaten that point to death, but it's like it can't be overstated.
It
You know,
can't
that
be.
that is the whole problem with the sequel trilogy. But okay, so Palpatine being back, we've gone through that. What was something you liked about The Last Jedi? The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, the Rise of Skywalker. The thing I like most is something that it didn't even get touched on really. And occasionally they would say something like, the Empire only wins because they make you feel alone or whatever. Um, and then the final, they say that like twice. And then at the end, when they're about to go to Exegol, Lando's like, I'll go and get the entire universe to show up. And then he does, you know. And I and yeah, the setup was lackluster, but I loved that like the entire galaxy was like, hey, we're done with this crap. I don't, we're not gonna just let the Empire pick us off one by one. We're gonna go and take the fight to them, and if we can, you know, if we can shut them down here, then we can all live in more or less normal peace. I don't want to say it will be a utopia because it never is, but like that's the idea. And so when everything looks lost and Poe is like, I'm sorry, my friends, like we're screwed, we're dead, and then all of these ships show up. That was my favorite part of the entire movie. They should have been building towards that from the beginning. From Force Awakens, the entire problem has been the majority of people in the universe, in the galaxy, are just kind of stagnant whatevers. So if they are slowly trying to show a bit of unrest or something here and there, this like little tiny thread through all of the movies that lead to that, like that should have been a plot point from the beginning. Because clearly it was in J.J. Abrams' head, you know?
Right.
So like he could have, and maybe he came up with it afterwards. What's his name? Ryan Johnson at the end of the movie when they send out the distress call, like there was some kind of setup for everyone, more people joining the resistance kind of thing, but like that never happened. But that could have been a plot point through a little tiny thread through the entire thing. Unrest in a couple of places, um, just general discontent, like why does this keep happening to us,
Right.
And then because it's been what, Zach, 60 years since the fall of the Empire at this point, or the rise of the Empire, the fall of I can't remember the timeline from the Clone Wars to here.
I think it's been about 50 years, half a century.
So presumably there are still people out there who have seen the fall of the New Republic, the fall of the Empire, and the rise of the First Order and the Resistance.
Right.
And at a certain point, all of these people have to be like, all right, this is just we've had enough of this, you know?
Right.
Um, so like that should have been a plot point. That was something I really liked. I just wish it had been more developed rather than right at the end this happened. Like I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get you. And yeah, I think it was a nice spectacle, but I have a problem with them including it because it doesn't make sense. It's like they're trying to pull things back from The Force Awakens to make sense in The Rise of Skywalker. It's almost like they're trying to retcon The Last Jedi as if it never happened. And so I get what you mean. Like the idea is good, but I don't think it makes sense to even include it. So even though it was a good thought, I would cut it out completely. It's like at this point, it doesn't even matter. You've
At yeah.
it just you show up with thousands of people or thousands of ships willing to fight the First Order. It's like, well, where was that when the Resistance was happening? It's only been a year. We should have already been to this point if we were going to be there. So I I have a hard time with that idea.
So I agree, and that's my point. I like the idea of it, but it was poorly executed and just pulled out of nowhere. But if we are getting rid of everything that was poorly executed and pulled out of nowhere, um,
We'll get rid of episodes 7, 8, and 9.
yes, yes, absolutely. So anyway, that's something that I liked as a thought. Like
Okay.
it wasn't perfectly executed, and they never are, you know.
Right. Right.
But had that been an actual plot point that had started, like the seeds had been planted in, you know, wherever and migrated through the movies, I think it would have been a powerful end to the series because it's like, yeah, it's the Skywalker saga, but the maybe the entire point of this series should be maybe we shouldn't rely on one person
Right.
the entire time, you know? And
Right.
that's the balance that they're bringing. But but anyway, so that was something that I liked. You did not like it, but your turn. What was something you liked, an individual aspect or whatever of the movies that you thought was a cool idea or
Well, see, one thing that I actually did think was kind of cool, and this is the problem with the Rise of Skywalker, is there are things that it's like, yeah, that was a pretty cool idea. It was just too little, too late. And the one that comes to mind is the dyad and the Force. Not
okay.
necessarily that Kylo and Rey were the dyad, but like the idea of having such a strong connection between these two individuals that you can interact with, the environment around them. Like I thought that was kind of a cool spectacle. It was kind of a cool idea, and so those those fights I thought were interesting. And they kind of set it up in The Last Jedi. This is one thing that sort of continued onward that made they tried to make sense of something that happened in The Last Jedi rather than just ignoring it. You
Right.
know, Rey and Kylo Ren had these conversations in The Last Jedi, and then they continue, but now their connection is strong enough that they interact with each other. They can fight each other from completely different places, and I thought that idea was really interesting. I think it deserved to have more fleshing out, and I think they should have introduced it in The Force Awakens and kind of built on this, to I don't know, have their relationship have more girth to it, more of a conflict, more, are they allies or are they not allies? I don't know. I thought it was an interesting idea.
So I didn't like it, and the reason I didn't like it is the same reason you don't like the all the ships showing up at the end.
Fair.
Because it was kind of pulled out of not it wasn't as pulled out of nowhere because like you said it was the connection was made during um them being connected was made during whatever it's called um The Last Jedi.
Right.
But you could say that about anything, like, um but it wasn't my favorite plot point, I thought like how is this possible? Like if it had some really similar, not similar, but good explanation, or like some wise person besides Palpatine was like a dyad in the Force.
Right.
My Palpatine is not very good, by the way, by
And
impression.
it's not. It's
Uh,
never been your strong point.
no, voices aren't my thing, except for that one brief moment 9 years ago when we were roommates and I nailed the Yoda laugh, and then I've been trying to recapture it since,
And you've been unsuccessful. It
and
was
I've been
perfect,
unsuccessful.
and then you lost it.
Really, the only voice I can do is Mrs. Weasley. How dare you steal that car? Anyway, sorry, I am just getting off track. Um, but back to, the Rise of Skywalker. I don't like your point, not because it's not a good idea, but just it's like it's pulled out of a hat, just like anything else. It's like,
Sure.
well, let's expand on this, and to be fair to J.J. Abrams coming in and trying to connect anything that he can from The Last Jedi and bring it into the Rise of Skywalker, like that might be the only plot point that, could have been expanded on.
Right.
So,
But I've already trashed The Last Jedi enough. I won't I was about to launch into another tirade, but I'll let it rest. I'll let
right.
it rest.
So, but the idea of the dyad, if they had set that up in The Force Awakens with like that's what awakens is this dyad, and they kind of have that moment at the end, or even, when Rey is first captured and their first real face-to-face meeting with Kylo and Rey, like if there's like some weird like
Hmm.
thing that Kylo sees but Rey doesn't, like, you know what I mean? Like
I do. I do.
rather than it just seems like he's obsessed. I don't know.
Well, and one thing about the dyad and the Force, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for it to be between a Skywalker and a Palpatine.
Right.
It's like they did that because it's like whatever, but it's like, but what, how does it make sense? I think, and I thought this for a long time. I thought that Rey should have been a descendant of Obi-Wan,
Hmm.
like Obi-Wan's granddaughter instead of, Palpatine.
Right.
And and there's a way in the lore that it could happen. I'm not going to go into it, but I thought that would have made more sense because, you know, Anakin Skywalker, his connection was with his master Obi-Wan. If there was ever a dyad between two characters prior to this, it would be those two, not Vader and Palpatine. It's like Palpatine manipulated Anakin, but there wasn't any sort of connection. You know what I mean? That it was, I don't know, it didn't quite make sense. And, there were other things that I thought were pointing towards Rey being a Kenobi from back in The Force Awakens, but, it just, that's more a reforging topic. But the point is, I did like the idea, but enough about that. What was something you didn't like in the film?
So starting at the beginning, and then it ended. No, I mean it's stuff that we had said before. The details, like here, we have this ancient Sith dagger that somehow says, the Emperor's Wayfinder is here, and then
But it's
and
ancient. It's
yeah,
ancient. It was supposed to
ancient, yeah.
predate Palpatine. and
Yes.
somehow it lines up with the ruins of the Death Star. Like I
Right.
just
Yeah.
do they think we're
A
idiots?
magical dagger is forged, and then it magically has the words on it that, magically point to it. And then Rey magically finds the exact spot she needs to magically line up the ruins of the Death Star to magically
Hmm.
find the exact spot where it is. Magically.
Magically. No,
And
I'm
like and like and it's not that we're like, okay, the force exists. We know there are prophecies. We know there are, you know, like people who can see the future, that kind of stuff. But like this stretches the bounds of
it
incredulity.
does. It
And
does. And
that's my
it's
problem. So when if anyone's in the comments like, come on, man, you're in a world with the force. It's like, yes, we are, but even the force is not a precise science,
no,
Like,
no, and you talk about prophecy. Sure, there are prophecies, but this was X marks the spot. Go here, this will be here. And it was
right.
supposed to be 10,000 years ago. It's like that's that's like you said, it's pushing the bounds of incredulity. And how do you say that?
Incredulity. Yeah.
Incredulity.
And so that's my biggest complaint. And a lot of it is that way.
Right.
But give me, suspend our annoyance at them bringing Palpatine back as the villain. Um I don't necessarily hate the idea of, okay, there's this world out there that, the ancient Sith world where, you know, the real main villain is. We need to get there. How do we get there? I don't dislike that idea necessarily. It is essentially, uh Return of the Jedi-esque, where
Right.
it's like, well, we got to go to the Death Star. We got to face the actual villain. And so Hero goes into the den. And so I don't necessarily dislike that idea, but like it's the getting there.
Right.
We need to get them there. So let's make is that Luke. You remember how everyone is pissed that he was just throwing a hissy fit for years? Actually, he wasn't. He was looking for Exegol. You
Right.
know?
Right.
What else? Well, okay, so if we're gonna find some sort of trail, we need something for them to find. The dagger. They find an object, and that object you could read it, and it'll tell you where that other object is, the object that can take you there. And there were only two. And, like that's my, you know, everything about it is just a convenient
It is.
plot after a convenient plot after it's just the same thing. Handing Ray this, handing Ray this, handing Ray this, handing the Resistance this. And
Right.
so it again stretches the bounds of incredulity because you can't, you know, it's just one thing after another to get them there when there could be some easy thing. The entire plot is we need to get there. Well, bring the spy in. Someone has to know, you
Right.
know, or or it could just be as easy as, they steal Kylo's ship. Like, remember when they're on the desert world and Kylo's gonna run over Rey with his ship and she does that backflip and cuts the wing? Like,
Hmm.
why can't they just go and get the wreckage there? Like, it's got
Right.
to have a computer. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's if that's what they're trying to do, then the the plot shouldn't be we need to find the Navicomputer. It should be we need to find what world this is so we can go.
Right.
Is that does that make sense? I know it's a little it's like splitting hairs, but like the entire thing is we need the way to get there, but if you just switch it to we don't know where this is, we need that information. Let's go get that information.
Right.
It's like Rogue One. Rogue One was so successful because they were trying to get the plans and they had all these cool things and like that it was about the information, not how am I going to get there to this world. You know,
Right.
I don't know. Am I and maybe I'm nitpicky about it, but like I think that one small change could have fixed a lot of my issues with it.
No, and I'm with you. I mean, my whole problem is I don't understand why Kylo Ren wanted to go find Exegol in the first place.
Right.
Like, what was his motivation? He had the overwhelming power of the First Order behind him now. He's the supreme leader. So what does he care? He's won. He's got his goose.
Right.
I don't know if that's an actual phrase, but it is
It
now.
sounds
He's
like
got
it
his
is.
goose. He's got
Yeah.
his goose. He doesn't need anything. You
Right.
know, he just needs to maintain power. It's like, and the resistance wasn't exactly a threat here, you know?
No.
And at that point, neither really was Palpatine. Yeah, I
Right.
don't know. So
Well,
I have a problem with that too. But
in theory, no one could get to Palpatine, and Palpatine couldn't get to, you know, if we're examining this the way it is, there are two wayfinders, right?
right,
Um, Hypothetically, one for Palpatine and one for Palpatine's apprentice.
right,
And Palpatine's is in his vault in the Death Star because Palpatine needs it if he's going to get to Exegol.
right,
Um, and then yeah, okay. The other one needs to be somewhere else because you probably shouldn't have the two of them there if, you know, that's the only way in or out. So like I'm okay with there's this world that you can't really get to unless you have this, you know, this path, the information essentially, the hidden hyperspace route to get there. Like I'm fine with that idea. Um, and even that there are two of them to get there as like a safeguard for the apprentice and master thing. Um, I don't mind that, I guess, but I don't know. It's just, what am I even trying to say, Zach? You can see where I'm going with this, but I can't.
it, it's just a hot mess, is what it
It's
is.
just a hot mess. It's a hot mess. And so I feel like there's got to be um a different thing.
Well, when we reforge, I do have some ideas that I think might, I don't know, like minor tweaks that can save some of these
All
silly
right.
plot points.
Okay.
But
I before we get
you,
there, I have one other thing I want to bring up.
okay,
And this is a nitpicky thing that has bothered me, and I don't know if there's an answer or not. Um, but it's specifically dealing with Palpatine.
okay,
Okay. So in Return of the Jedi, when Palpatine is force lightninging? It's
lightningy.
lightninging.
It's lightningy.
Um, yeah. Comment if you caught that reference. Um, but lightning, you know, he's using force lightning on Luke, and then Vader picks him up and throws him off the side, and he doesn't just stop using his lightning, right? And then in Revenge of the Sith, Mace Windu, you know, knocks his lightsaber away. He's using force lightning, and Mace is turning it back on him, you know, with this thing, and it's really cool. Um, but he just doesn't stop, and then he's got force lightning face, you know? And then the
Right.
same thing happens here. Like Rey at the very end has the two lightsabers and she's pushing and pushing back and pushing back, and he can't stop or can't or doesn't stop his lightning, and she redirects it back on him, and then he just disintegrates.
Right.
And I don't understand why this all-powerful Sith doesn't just stop and switch to another technique in the Force. He has to have more than just Force lightning.
Right.
Why doesn't he just stop using Force lightning?
Well, as far as using other force abilities, I think he definitely should have. It's like he's just pretty one note, and he's supposed to be this extremely powerful Sith Lord, right?
Right.
But I do have an idea that is based in reality for why he can't stop once the lightning starts reflecting back on him. Okay. And this is based in reality. This is a real thing here. Okay. I'm about to educate
Our
you.
world reality. Earth.
Our world reality, an
Okay.
actual physical, not fictional, real life world. Okay.
Okay.
So in your heart and basically everything in your body is run by electric currents, right? And but especially the heart. They joke about there are two kinds of heart doctors. There are plumbers that deal with the veins, and there's electricians that deal with, the rhythm. And the way your heart works is there's a little area in one part of it that sends a pulse and it goes through the rest of your heart and makes the muscle contract. Sends a pulse, makes it contract. And that's the rhythm. It's the pacemaker. You hear about pacemakers that people get artificially. Well, you have a natural pacemaker. That's what keeps your heart going all the time. That's why we don't have to think about it, right? Well, there is a heart disease, a rhythm disease that you can acquire that we call like um, a reentrant current, and it causes your heartbeat to go crazy fast. And the idea is you've got your pacemaker over here, and then it travels down this area through something we call the AV node, and then it branches off and goes to your two ventricles. The ventricles are the sacs of blood in the heart that actually contract and send it out to the rest of your body, right? But there's a malformation that can occur where in the AV node, you have, instead of coming down straight and then branching, you can have these two paths that kind of come around like this, right? If one of them becomes slow, you have this one coming fast, this one coming slow, this one coming fast, this one coming slow. You can create that's what we call it, as a re-entrant cycle. And it comes spinning round and around and around and around, and it cannot stop. And then you get heartbeats of like 160, 170 per minute, which, normal is 90-ish or below, right?
Yeah.
And it physically cannot stop because it just keeps depolarizing the muscle. So, connecting that back to Palpatine, the reason why he can't stop is because the lightning, when it reflects back on him, creates a reentrant sort of current to where it's depolarizing, forcing him to continue shooting out lightning. And it's his own demise, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know that's a bit of a stretch, but it's a real world thing that happens that I think you can spread the butter thin enough to cover the edges of this question here, okay?
Okay.
I
I
think it works.
I can get behind the idea. Um, because clearly, Zach, medical student year 3, having been through all of this, you know what you're talking about. Um, but like he's supposed to be smart, right? So once it starts reflecting back, why doesn't he just stop?
But that's the point. He can't.
Not when it's reflecting back. I mean, all right, he's got the consciousness of Palpatine.
Sure.
In Revenge of the Sith, this happened once, and he survived. So he's got Rey. Rey is, you know, 10 feet away, and he's trying to force lightning her, and she's blocking it.
Right.
Um, why doesn't he just stop then? This is my problem. It's not the explanation. It's the execution of his force abilities. Because he should have just stopped doing that and sucked her life away like he did 10 minutes ago.
Now, that I can only chalk up to poor writing. But if I had to bring it down to an in-universe explanation, I would say it's because of his arrogance and his confidence in his power,
Yeah.
right? He thinks, yeah, this has happened before, but I'm stronger now. She's weaker, it's like I if I overpower this person, it won't happen again. I can overpower it. I can outlast. I outlasted Windu. I would have outlasted Vader if he hadn't thrown me down the shaft. I'm stuck to this claw
Yeah.
thing. I can't go anywhere. I can outlast this fledgling Jedi. That's it's pretty flimsy
It is.
because poor writing, but that would be my closest thing to an explanation.
This is my problem. And it started with and not criticizing the original trilogy. But we've talked about it like, okay, the Death Star didn't work. Let's build another one. And that's fine because the first one was sabotaged. It was
Right,
kind of retconned in, but like it was sabotaged because what's his name? The engineer was strong-armed into doing it. He didn't want to, so he left a little, easy way to destroy it. So I get that. The second is okay, we can build it back stronger, get rid of that point, and then we're unstoppable.
right,
Um, and then it's destroyed before it happens. Um, and then in Force Awakens, it's because it wasn't big enough. Let's make an entire planet that size, and then we can suck dry suns, and it's like that's the flawed logic. They are supposed to be cunning, you know.
right, right,
Um, the Sith have been around for a long time, and they finally realized their goal of destabilizing the Republic, overthrowing the Jedi, and taking control of the galaxy.
right,
And it's the culmination of all of this careful planning, being in the shadows, manipulating, realizing that their power is not in lightsaber strength or physical force powers. It's in manipulation and foresight
hmm
and I don't want to call it more esoteric aspects of the force, but that kind of thing where it's like we are trying to do something and undermine everything. We need our fingers in each little pile of or each part of the galaxy, each pie. We're trying to. So they've got all of this, and then immediately he's like, "I'm good. Let's just make it bigger, bigger, more."
right.
You know.
I'm with you, and like I said, there's nothing to say about that except poor writing,
Right.
and that's what I loved about Palpatine in the prequel trilogy, and we talked about this, is the manipulation. That's
Hmm.
why I love Palpatine. That's why I think he's a great villain. I wish they would have shown more of his manipulation,
Right.
but that's his whole thing. He's subtle, he's cunning, and like you said, the Force lightning backfiring on him, that happens once in Revenge of the Sith. I think it was a learning moment. It's fine. He didn't know that was going to happen.
Right.
In Return of the Jedi, Vader comes up behind him. He didn't expect that. And that
Right.
connected the current, right? So he didn't know that was going to happen. But then in The Rise of Skywalker, he's right in front of it. He knows what happened last time. And it's like he should have learned more. He should
Yeah.
have better a better thought process. I don't know. But
Right.
anyway, I think we've beaten that to death too.
I
So,
think so. Before we get to reforging, is there anything else you wanted to mention?
you know, just one other thing praising the Rise of Skywalker, since we've been trashing it. There's one thing that I did like that we've talked about in the past, specifically talking about the Phantom Menace. We talked about how we wanted to see Maul causing havoc.
Mhm.
What I did appreciate about the Rise of Skywalker is in, the opening sequence, how it shows Kylo Ren going absolutely feral and
Yeah.
just wiping out these people. Like that's what I want to see in a
Yeah.
villain that has actively chosen to go to the dark side. I want to see them being evil,
Yeah.
like it brings some weight to who they are.
Right.
It deepens their character. And so that that sequence, those scenes, I think were what I wanted from some of the previous Star Wars films, and
Right.
I liked that they included that. So just
I
my
can get behind that. I agree with that. I feel like I feel like it was well, I'm gonna get into this when we reforge. Um, so I'm gonna table that, but I like what they were doing with Kylo at that point.
I
He's
did too.
absolutely feral. He's going, he is going to um, you know, he's trying to find the thing or whatever, but
Hmm.
he is just going wild and killing all of them, and I love it. I love it. They should have done that in every film.
Right.
But anyway, anything else? I like it because I want to touch on that later. But
I think that's it. I think I'm ready to begin reforging this film.
okay, let's start now. Parameters. We're not reforging the series. We're
Nope.
reforging the film. So
So taking it from where The Last Jedi left off.
yes. Okay, your turn. Let's go.
Okay, so the very most basic change, and it's not even a big change. It's a small change. You can keep so many of the elements with this tiny little change. Don't have Palpatine just there. Don't have Snoke be a failed clone of Palpatine. Have Kylo Ren searching for Exegol because there's a cloning facility that the Emperor had set up, never got to use, and Kylo Ren's motivation is he's trying to resurrect Palpatine. Make that one little tweak, and it can fix a lot of the problems. There's no somehow Palpatine returned. There's no, how does Palpatine have his consciousness back? There's no, none of these problems. None of the, well, why the crap is Kylo Ren trying to find Exegol in the first place? How did he know that the Emperor was there? It's like find have that be his goal, is he's trying to resurrect the Emperor, right? And the Resistance, Rey, Finn, Poe, they're trying to stop him.
Right.
You can still keep the spy, have the spy say Kylo Ren is searching for a way to resurrect Palpatine. And it's like, you're kidding. We cannot let that happen. He was an absolute tyrant. We cannot let that happen. That would be game over for the entire galaxy. And that change, I mean, just that one little change, you can keep so many elements. You can keep, the kind of scavenger hunt. You can keep the little locator things, but just that one change, the one change in the motivation of the plot. You can still even have Palpatine show up in the end, you know, but have the motivation actually make some sense, you know.
Right.
Now, the one thing that um the one thing that may be a problem with that is, again, the why. Well, why is Kylo Ren trying to resurrect Palpatine?
I have an answer to that.
Well, let's hear
Okay.
it.
He's the supreme leader. He is not the Lord of the Sith.
There you go. He needs to be trained in the
He
ways of the Sith.
needs and this is the thing that I want. This is what I was touching on. I don't want Kylo Ren redeemed.
I don't either. I don't either.
He has been fighting to be a villain his entire time. He should have succeeded.
Hmm.
And if he is going to be the villain, he wants to be the Lord of the Sith. He needs information. He needs to learn how to be a Sith Lord. If Snoke wasn't the Supreme Lord of the Sith, and clearly he's not,
Because he
because
was taken out by Kylo Ren.
he was taken out by Kylo Ren so easily and
Hmm.
should have, like the rule of two, one to embody the power, one to crave it,
Exactly.
that should be his motivation. But
But now he's
he wasn't
floundering.
he wasn't taught all of the secrets of the Sith, you know. He needs that. He needs to
Perfect.
find something to become the Lord of the Sith.
And
Um,
see, that already, that one change makes the entire film more plausible, more
mhm.
engaging.
Yep.
That's all you needed. And you can still have your dyad in the Force if you want. You can still have Rey trying to bring him back, but let her fail. Let Kylo Ren be the villain. He killed Han Solo in the beginning. That should have been his turning point. There's
Right.
no coming back from that. He
Nope.
made his choice,
Absolutely.
and so that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. And I think, had they done that, even with all these other weird plot points, these fan servicey things, that would have at least made some sense instead of, I don't know, he's back. I don't know what to tell you guys.
Yeah.
Somehow Palpatine returned. It's like, no, 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 no. Make sense of the plot. Have
Right.
some actual motivation, you
That
know?
that one thing, literally, I can't think of anything else that I wanted to see. Um, Granted, you know, from this movie, we are not fixing the past. It is
Correct.
not, it is not and here's the thing. From the beginning, I wanted Kylo Ren to be the evil ultimate battle guy, ultimate
Right.
Sith. So I am fine if that's what gets him there. I wish there had been other things that had happened and that he wasn't so clearly amateurish and being toyed around with by Snoke,
Right.
but he gets there. He wants to be that evil guy, and so that's his entire motivation. And it should be. He kills his dad. He knows what he needs to do, but he doesn't know if he has the strength. And then he kills Han. And from that point on, he should have been the evil, evil, evil guy,
Hmm.
trying to figure it out. And I don't even mind that he kind of throws fits every once in a while and because he's not a fully trained Sith.
Right.
He's trying to find the dark side. And if his entire goal is I need like a holocron or I need to find Palpatine's, you know, written records or whatever. I wouldn't even bring Palpatine back as a resurrected or cloned whatever. I would have his like evil force ghost,
A Sith ghost.
a Sith ghost.
And
Um,
there's precedent for that
there is.
in one of the Clone Wars episodes. Yoda is on a journey to figure out how to communicate with Qui-Gon, how to
Mhm.
become a Force ghost, and he interacts with the ghost of Darth Bane,
Right.
and so there's already a precedence for it.
So if that is it, like that could be the great whoa,
Hmm.
Palpatine's ghost. He is learning, and it's not Palpatine trying to, come back because the ghost can't, inhabit a living vessel anymore.
Right,
But that knowledge, he can use that knowledge to enact a ritual or do something, and then Rey and company can show up at the end. And then you don't need the entire galaxy because it's not just here's this huge fleet that we somehow created with no one noticing because we had all of this money and all of these people and all of this stuff just out in the middle of nowhere,
right.
you know. Um, but like the conflict then is not just a repeat of what's it called? Of Return of the Jedi. It's something new. It's we are stopping the Sith now.
Hmm.
Um, and you can even have, a battle against you know, the First Order fleet or whatever, his ship
Well,
or
and that's the
anything.
thing. You can have Kylo call in his fleet and
Yeah,
still have the Resistance have to muster up a force and have the same idea of them battling above and battling below.
right.
But simple fixes could have made this film so much more palatable, you know?
hmm And I
And
like the idea of the Resistance chasing him,
mhm,
not him chasing the Resistance the entire time.
exactly.
What else? What else do we throw in here to make it palatable? Or did we solve it with just one idea?
Honestly, I think that one idea is enough. I mean, the sequel trilogy was already a mess, but building on what Rian Johnson did, I think if you take it in that simple direction, Kylo Ren realizes, well, crap, I messed up because just killed my teacher, and I still don't know everything there is to know about the dark side of the Force. I need to learn. I need to find a way to do it and have that be the motivation. It's like that solves 80% of the problems, you
Hmm
know? And so honestly, I think that's enough. I mean, of course, there are things that I would change. Some of
Right.
the dialogue is even clunkier than George Lucas's, which I didn't know was possible.
hmm
I didn't like, well, I just didn't see the point of all of a sudden, Finn has a love interest in the that other ex stormtrooper. Poe
Right.
has a former love interest that you don't even really know the name of. She's just some bounty hunter thing. It's
Right.
like, and they come in for 5 minutes of the film, then they're gone. And it's like, well, what was the point of that?
Right.
Just so that there was a reason for them to be able to get to I can't remember the name of the planet that they go to get 3PO
Kajimi, I believe.
Kaji
Kajimi.
Kajimi. And it's like it was just a reason for them to get to Kajimi. It's like the convenience plots, take those out, have them chasing Kylo Ren, and I think honestly that solves 80% of it and would have been such a better resolution than this. Oh, Palpatine's back. Hurry, we got to bring him back because
Right.
the series is failing. It's like
Right.
it would have been so much better.
The only other thing, and I know you didn't like the point of everyone showing up at the end, um, but had there been a, you know, send out Leia's personal, you know, uh, signature or whatever, and you start to see people respond to that. That's the only other thing I would want is you have other people responding. It's not no one came. It's like, okay, people are responding, and that gives urgency to Kylo to find find something. The
Right,
tides are turning. He needs to become the all-powerful Sith Lord because the First Order is floundering
right.
and they're on the back foot and people and resistance is building, you know?
So you want that to be in at the front end of the film.
Yeah,
So people are starting to respond in the beginning, and that is giving urgency to Kylo Ren to find something to get
something.
him more powerful. I get, yeah, okay.
Yes.
I 100% agree with that. I think that would be a great addition.
Because it's more than just, you know, and I hate to say it like this, but I'm going to. The ragtag resistance
Again,
rebellion, it's played out.
it
And
is.
it's okay. It's okay that there's like, it started that way in the ebb and flow, but like it's played out.
Right,
We need the final nail in the coffin of the Sith to be the entire galaxy showing up against them, not just a small, tiny group trying to take over, you know?
right, right,
And so that's what I would have wanted to see. People are responding. Wow. Okay. Leia herself is calling on the entire galaxy. We just saw them blow up five freaking planets, and like, that's gonna be us, you know?
hmm
And we need to stop this before it goes any farther.
right,
Um, and there are more of us than there are of them. And that's it. People start responding, people start showing up. At the beginning of the film, like, it fades out into space and then the ship comes. You should have ships flooding to wherever they are.
right.
I think that makes it more compelling. And then you drop down to Kylo just going ham hog wild on whoever,
Right.
trying to find something and you have it doesn't even need to be explained um through dialogue or anything. The drop down, the words that come up, whatever we call that, it's like people are responding to Leia's call. The
hmm
resistance is swelling in ranks. Kylo Ren, in a last ditch effort to whatever, is doing this, you know?
You cut out there for a minute, brother.
Shoot. Oh no, you're cutting out too. I guess that means we're about done. But
I guess it does.
I think if you explain in the beginning that people are answering Leia's call and that is what is panicking um Kylo, and he decides he needs to go from being the supreme leader to the Lord of the Sith.
hmm
And then you say he is looking for Palpatine's lost world. You cut out again. Shoot, are we done? Looks like we're about done.
You froze again there, T. I heard you say we're about done.
Well, my internet connection must be fading or dying.
Okay.
But that is my final thing. We're beating a dead horse.
But I think those two ideas are enough to salvage the entire sequel trilogy, honestly.
Yes,
Had there been a reasonable conclusion like that, it would have saved the entire sequel trilogy. So I'm stamping the Quill and Hammer seal of approval on this reforging, and I'm calling it good.
I agree. What do you guys think out there? Did we fix it? Did we do it? Did we solve string theory? Did
Did we
we
crush it?
did we cross it? Did he cross it? Did we solve the main problem of the sequel trilogy? Did we somehow connect it? Let us know, comment, and I'm Zach. This is Trevor, but flip that. I said this is Zach and I'm Trevor. We are Reforging Fiction, and we'll be back next time.